Good morning. Welcome to Great Tree Zen Women's Temple. And our Saturday morning talk is with Genryu Brook Reynolds. But first, Tejo, would you like to start the opening sutra?
Tejo and Trey will chant it.
Okay.
An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to, remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's teaching.
Now, a brief statement about dana. In Buddhism, when Zen practitioners share their understanding of the teachings and practice, it is offered freely as a practice of dana paramita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this practice is done without expectation of getting something in return. This is the spirit of speaking about the Dharma. Other ways to practice dana are to offer support to those who share the teachings, to support places of spiritual practice, and to give without judgment or expectation when opportunities arise. Those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a dana basis. Please support their practice by giving what you can. And Brooke, do you have a preference for dana?
Please direct your dana towards Great Tree.
Thank you. And you can send your dana to greattreetemple.org and then follow their donate path.
Is it time for me to talk?
Almost. I have to introduce you. I'm trying to pin you. Okay. Genryu Brook Reynolds has been practicing at Great Tree for many years. In addition to her study and practices of Zen Buddhism, her being in nature has been an integral part of her personal growth and healing. During the pandemic, she completed her certification as a nature and forest therapy guide with the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy. Welcome, Genryu.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So I guess today I'm supposed to be talking some more about the precept ceremony that I attended with Genjo and Tejo in November of last year in Los Angeles. It was a celebration of the 100th anniversary of Soto Zen Buddhism in America. And it was a 5-day ceremony. It was 4 full days, very full days. And then the last day was a half day. In the introduction of the first day, we were told that the focus of this ceremony would be the great circle of Buddhas and ancestors practicing together with all beings. And that circle, in a sense, embodied the reality to which the Buddha awakened, which was the interconnectedness of everyone, of all beings. There's a quote by Shohaku that I found somewhere, and I'm not sure he said this in the ceremony, but I found it somewhere. And Shohaku Okamura was one of the teachers who spoke on the precepts. Shohaku spoke on the 3 refuges and the 3 pure precepts. And then Reverend Tenshin Anderson spoke on the 10 grave precepts or major precepts. They're called different things, but part of the ceremony was a good part of it was Dharma talks. There was also a lot of chanting and bowing, even singing. A lot of that was in preparation for the actual, like, part one of receiving the precepts is repentance, and that was done on the third evening, and then part two is receiving the precepts, and that was done on the fourth evening. But Shohaku, the quote from him says, the reality to which Buddha awakened is the source of these precepts. That is our faith. And that reality is that is dependent co-arising, or interdependence, interconnectedness, are all different ways of sort of saying the same thing, that all beings are connected and all beings depend on each other for our existence. So that was the source of the precepts. And so my understanding from some of the talks about the precepts was that I don't even know how to say this. This is so hard to talk about, but that the precepts, that this awakening to this truth, it happens within delusion. You can't really have one without the other. It happens right in the middle of delusion, and the delusion is basically the thinking you are separate from all other beings, and this thinking that you are separate causes suffering. And the precepts, you know, they were explained to us before we actually received them, I guess, so we would know what we were getting ourselves into. But they were explained in a way that there was a depth to them in this experience. And I say experience because the whole, like, 5 days was one big ritual. So it was like an embodiment of the precepts. And I think that's what's so important about any ritual, is it's an opportunity to experience and embody what it is that you are vowing to do, or what it is that you're learning about, what it is that you're practicing. It's an opportunity to embody that. So the precepts were sort of described and from the perspective of compassion, that having compassion for delusion, having compassion for this feeling of separation, which is sort of the driving force behind breaking all the precepts, this feeling of me, of my ego, feeling separate, or needing more, or feeling this separation, this disconnection of myself, that sort of drives the breaking of precepts. So having compassion is like it's the medicine for the feeling of delusion. So it's like, and it's also the prevention at the same time. So it cures that, and it prevents that. So one of the things, and it's hard to explain, one of the things that was touched on was Dogen's understanding of the precepts being that when when you experience, or when you experience or awaken to the truth, that you are not separate, that everything is connected, it's not possible to even break the precepts. It would not even occur to you. It's like it would not even enter your mind. And it's still, I mean, very hard for me to grasp that. It's like I can like catch a glimpse of it, and then it's gone. But compassion was sort of so this connection, interconnection and compassion were sort of running throughout this whole ceremony. And there were times in the ceremony where, I was feeling, I was having a lot of different feelings. I was feeling, in the beginning, I was feeling some fear, because there was so much going on. I was, feeling like a little overwhelmed, but we were all doing that together. And at various points throughout the ceremony, there were people available to help us, whether there were priests who are kind of surrounding the 98 people that were there on either side, or the priests in the front, or the people next to you, who are there to support you. I was very fortunate that I had two people next to me that were elders in their sanghas. These two women were elders in their sanghas, and they had both been sewn rakusus by their communities to show their appreciation for their teachings. And I did not even know that that was a practice. So I was like, had on either side of me these elders, these women that were so loved by their community. They had these rakusus, and I felt so protected by them. And I felt so protected by just, all the priests, the entire community. I also felt protected and comforted by the familiarity of some of the forms, not all of them, but some of the chants, some of the forms, some of the terms. There was some familiarity in that. And this idea of feeling protected, that comes from a place of feeling like I'm sort of going towards this idea of feeling connected versus feeling protected. And if I feel like I need protection, I'm feeling like separate. I'm feeling like there's something lacking, something I do not have that I need from someone else. And there were times where I felt that way. I felt very vulnerable. There was one time during the ceremony, well, we read this. We had a lot of chants in the ceremony, and one of the chants I had never read before, and it was the verse. It was I put it in the chat. It was the Avalokiteshvara verse of the Universal Gateway chapter from the Lotus Sutra. So we every day kind of had a very similar structure, opening with chants and greeting the teachers, and so every day around 11:30 we would chant this chant. And the first day we chanted it, I was just kind of blown away, because I had never heard it or read it before, and it really deeply affected me. And then the next day, during the chant, I think the first day I was just kind of in shock. And then the second day, we were reading the chant, and there was a certain part, I mean, this chant basically, and I would like to read through it in a minute. Like, I would be happy to chant it and you can read along or you can chant with me, but I want to say a few things about it before I do that. So in this chant, it's basically calling on Avalokiteshvara, mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power to help you when you are experiencing any sort of real or imagined suffering. And this chant covers it all. Like, anything you could imagine happening, causing you suffering, is in it. Like, even things that don't even seem possible, because there are a lot of things that I imagine happening or a lot of things that I might, like, believe in that other people might not believe in, that could cause me a great deal of suffering. And I'm including like supernatural, irrational things. It's all in there. And at one point in the chant, one particular thing was mentioned, a very specific, concrete thing that I am experiencing and have been experiencing, that has been causing me a great deal of suffering. And I was like, oh, I can't believe that is being specifically mentioned here. So that was a shock the first day. The second day was, there it is again. And I just started crying. I couldn't even help myself. I just started crying. And one of my Dharma mothers, I called them my Dharma mothers, the two elders on either side of me with their special rakusus, she hands me a Kleenex, and then I was just like, okay, she was aware of my suffering and offered me a Kleenex. And that was very touching to me. And I, did not feel so alone. The third day, I was dreading the chant because I didn't want to break down crying again. But I'd already cried so much the night before, I don't think I had anything left. So I didn't start crying. I just was present with it. And then, the fourth day, it was a little bit different that time either. A little bit different that time also. I didn't cry again. I think I was more aware of the availability of compassion from others around me, compassion from, people that I had reached out to, even compassion for myself and how I was feeling. Because I know that I can make myself feel worse by separating myself from others, by saying nobody knows how I feel, nobody understands, nobody's experienced this before. I don't know anyone that's been through anything like this. And the truth is, there is someone somewhere who's experienced something like this. And even if that's not the case, I'm sure there's someone who knows what it feels like to think you're the only one who's ever been through this before. So, and that is an experience of empathy and compassion as well. So, I think now I'd like to read this, if that's okay. And was everyone able to pull up the PDF? So I'm pretty sure what you have there, because I got what you have there online, is the same as what was in our chant book for the ceremony. I did change something. I changed he to she. I think there were some people who, when they were chanting this, said she as opposed to he. I think Avalokiteshvara has had both genders at various points in history. So, you know, if you want to say he, fine. If you want to say she, fine. If you want to say one time and one the other, that's fine too. But I'm going to say she. Okay. Verse of the Universal Gateway chapter. Bodhisattva Akshamati asked a question in verse, O world honored one of wondrous form, I inquire again of that Buddha child, what are the causes of her name regarding the cries of the world? The honored one of wondrous form replied in verse to Akshamati, listen to the deeds of Avalokiteshvara, who aptly responds in every quarter. With vast pledge as deep as oceans, throughout kalpas beyond reckoning, she served many thousands of millions of Buddhas, bringing forth this great pure vow. For you, I explain it briefly. Hearing the name or seeing the form of Avalokiteshvara with mindful remembrance is not in vain, for the woes of existence can thus be relieved. Even if someone with harmful intent should push you into a fiery pit, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, the pit of fire will turn into a pool. If floating on a vast sea menaced by dragons, fish, or demons, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, the billowing waves cannot drown you. If from Mount Sumeru's lofty peak someone were to throw you down, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, like the sun, you would stand firm in the sky. If pursued by wicked men down from Diamond Mountain, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, they could not harm a single hair. If surrounded by vicious bandits, each with a sword drawn to strike, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, at once their hearts will turn to compassion. If persecuted by rulers, you face torture and execution, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, their weapons will thereby shatter to pieces. If imprisoned in shackles and chains, hands and feet bound in restraints, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, suddenly you shall be released. If by curses or poisonous herbs, someone wishes to hurt your body, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, the harmful intent will return to its source. If you meet evil creatures, poison dragons, or various demons, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, none will dare to harm you. If surrounded by raging beasts with sharp fangs and dreadful claws, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, they will quickly scatter in all directions. If venomous snakes or scorpions threaten with deadly breath of fire, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, at the sound of your voice, they will turn and depart. If clouds, thunder, and lightning strikes, hailstones fall and it rains in torrents, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, instantly they will dissipate. When living beings suffer hardships, burdened by immeasurable woes, the power of Avalokiteshvara's wondrous wisdom can relieve the suffering of the world. Fully endowed with the miraculous powers, widely practicing wisdom and skillful means, in every land, in all directions, in no realm does Avalokiteshvara not appear. In all the various evil destinies of hell beings, hungry ghosts, and animals, the sufferings of birth, old age, sickness, and death are gradually relieved by Avalokiteshvara. O you of the true gaze, of the pure gaze, of the gaze of broad and great wisdom, of the compassionate gaze and the gaze of goodwill, ever longed for, ever revered, unblemished, serene radiance, benevolent sun, dispelling all gloom, Avalokiteshvara can subdue the wind and fire of woes, clearly illuminating all the world. The precepts of compassion roar like thunder. The kind heart is wondrous as great clouds pouring Dharma rain of sweet dew, quenching all flames of troubling passion. In disputes before judges or fearful in the midst of battle, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, all hostilities will be dispersed. The wondrous voice of Avalokiteshvara, Brahma voice, voice of the rolling tides, surpasses all sounds within the world. Therefore, ever keep it in mind. In each thought, with never a doubt, Avalokiteshvara, the pure sage in pain, agony, or death's distress, can provide a sure support. Fully endowed with all virtues, her eyes of compassion behold all beings, assembling a boundless ocean of happiness. Thus, with reverence, you should make prostrations. Then Bodhisattva Dharanamdaro arose from his seat, went before the Buddha and said, "O world honored one, if there are living beings who hear this chapter of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, the benefits will not be slight for those people who come to know her deeds, her manifestation of a universal gateway, and her supernatural powers." When the Buddha had preached this universal gateway chapter, the 84,000 beings in the assembly all aroused the thought of unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment. So, thank you. Yeah. Couple of lines from that, bringing forth this great pure vow. We vowed to follow the precepts in the ceremony. The precepts of compassion roar like thunder. That compassion, awakening to the connection with all living beings and experiencing the compassion is the basis for following the precepts. The precepts, I was thinking about, the three pure precepts. And they were, let me find my notes, kind of in a nutshell, and I'm not trying to oversimplify something that's complicated, but avoiding harm, which is kind of like the embrace the moral codes. It's sort of the don't don't lie, don't steal, don't, the sort of, and then there's the doing good, which is embracing beneficial actions, which is do this, don't do that, do this. And then there's the third one is transcend the distinction between harm and good, and transcend this distinction between doing and not doing, and transcending all distinctions between yourself and the other, and embracing all living beings. It's this awakening to the connection with everyone, and that if I've experienced something, surely someone else has too, and having how I treat myself is how I treat the world. Having compassion for myself is how I have compassion for the world. But it's not, but it's not like I do this and then that. It's doing both at the same time. Having compassion for myself is having compassion for the world. Having compassion for the world is having compassion for myself. And following, these precepts as guidelines for living in harmony with all beings. if I'm following this way, the Buddha way, wholeheartedly, I'm doing something because doing it for myself and doing it for the world is what is best, I guess. And I don't even want to say best, that's like a comparison, but it's just doing it wholeheartedly. I'm not following the precepts because I want to gain something. I'm not following the precepts because I'm afraid of losing something. I'm just following the precepts because it's the natural thing to do when coming from an awareness of my connection with all beings. It's I need reminding of that, though. I need reminding that I am connected to all beings, because being in this body, in this what I feel like is a separate self, I have certain wants and needs. So I have fears. I have moments where I do feel separated, and I do suffer, and I need reminding. That's what this practice is. I need, a reminder from someone outside of myself. Sometimes the reminder comes from within too. I don't even know what causes that. Like, suddenly I just realize, oh, what I'm doing. I think that practice encourages and cultivates this ability to have this awareness that I am that I'm experiencing delusion, that I'm suffering, and I'm suffering because I'm experiencing, this separation from myself, or this feeling like I need to protect myself, separate myself, or that I am already separate from other beings. But the precepts, well, the practice gives me a chance to recognize when I'm deluded, and like I said earlier, awaken within that delusion. I can pause. I don't have to sort of habitually act out on these things, act out on this ancient twisted karma, act out on these habits of thinking and behavior that come from a feeling like I need to protect myself, my ego. I can pause and recognize, oh, I am acting out on this, or I'm about to act out on this, and choose to not do that, to not steal, not kill, not, use intoxicants, any number of the precepts. That's the avoid doing harm. And then I can choose to do good. In that moment that I've chosen to avoid doing harm, I can use that energy, and this was talked about while we were there. I can use that energy to do good. And that's important. And that part, that actual part, that to me is similar, if not, it's similar to the repentance part of the ceremony, where we acknowledge that we have done harm in the past. So the ceremony was broken up into two main parts. There's the repentance and then receiving the precepts. And it's important to kind of release all this past karma, all these numerous small things that add up to big things. I can't remember how that was described, but we actually had pieces of paper that had that phrase written on it, and we were given that, and then we gave it to Akiba Roshi, and then in the end, everyone's little pieces of paper were burned, and we could all watch that on happening in front of us. Everyone's karma was literally burned up at the same time, and the priests were around making sure that those little pieces of paper burned, and it was powerful to see that, to feel that. So the karma is released. We have to first become aware. Okay, I did something that was harmful. Name it. That's what I did. Regret it, and then take a vow to do better. And the vow to do better is to follow the precepts, to do our best to follow the precepts, knowing at some point, we're not going to follow them, not necessarily intentionally, and intentionally from this place of fear, of or anger or greed, or one of the poisons. Is it greed, anger, and delusion? I believe at one point, I think it was Shohaku was talking about the three poisons and comparing them to the three pure precepts, and how to avoid evil, the first pure precept, to avoid evil, the poison, anger, well, you need anger to fight evil. You need some anger. There needs to be some. You need to have both. They're two sides of the same coin, and he said to do good is the second pure precept. You need more. You need greed to do more good. Greed is more, wanting to do more. So there's a certain amount of greed needs to be there for you to even want to do more good. And then the third is embrace all beings, and you need ignorance to embrace all. And there needs to be an awareness that of some separation, or that others experience separation, to embrace all beings. So and this I keep this separation, this feeling of not being enough, not being whole, or being separate, or that's something I've been thinking about a lot since this ceremony, and how it relates to my own suffering, and how it relates to the precepts. And I think for me, it's like a lot of it boils down to not feeling like I'm enough, like there's something missing, or I'm not okay just as I am, or things in my world are not okay just as they are, and that I need to do something extra, to feel better, or extra for my life to be okay. And feeling like I'm not enough and I need to do more or be more is the kind of the driving force behind a lot of my suffering, and a lot of my missteps when trying to follow the precepts. One in particular that Tenshin Anderson, he talked about all of the 10 grave precepts, and one in particular, and he tied it all into compassion, and he tied it all into being wholeheartedly following the way, this idea of being whole. But one in particular that stood out to me was when he was talking about about not using or dealing with intoxicants or not abusing intoxicants. And the way he described it was, if you are feeling whole, or if you are whole and complete, there's no room to bring anything intoxicate. Like you're bringing a toxin in, something outside with the intention of changing yourself, but actually I think you're harming yourself. You're bringing something extra in that you don't really need, that is interfering with the clarity of your experience as being whole. So I don't know, I've been thinking about that one a lot too, and just this, the tying it back to the beginning, just this experience of wholeness, of unity within myself, outside myself, experiencing this ceremony with all of these other people, experiencing it with Taejo and with Genjo, and I'm very appreciative of Taejo, who has been sending me pictures of Avalokiteshvara from time to time to remind me, mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power. And that power is compassion. And so I'm grateful for those reminders. And, I'm grateful for knowing that is there, that is available. I may not always feel it in the moment, but that is available, that is there. Another friend recently reminded me that while I was expressing some suffering and pain to her, she said, there is a place of transcendence, and I was like, you know what? There is. I have faith in that. That is the Buddhist faith. That is faith that there is this place of wholeness, this place of transcendence where everything is okay just as it is. I may not feel that in the moment, and I didn't when my friend told me that, but knowing that it's there and knowing that I can feel that, that's at least comforting to me. And that kind of gets me halfway there. That gets me out of that feeling of utter despair where, oh, there is no hope, to, okay, there is this place. I'm not in it. I don't feel it, but it's there. I know it's there. And with the help of my community, my Sangha, and the teachings and the practice, I can experience that. And that is faith, and that is comforting, and that is safety, and that is connection and unity. I think I've talked enough. I can't believe I talked this long. So I'm going to stop now. And if anyone wants to share something, please feel free. Thank you.
Got several pages of notes here. Because some of the things you said, I was like, oh, that's what that means. when you said compassion is a basis for following the precepts, I was thinking, really what compassion is it's kind of that standing back, that ability to stand back, kind of like what you were talking about, what you just said about faith, I thought was really, really important. You could say kind of faith is the basis of the compassion, because you said that knowing that transcendence is happening or is possible, that you have faith even though you don't feel it. And I was thinking, when we let go, we don't feel it, but that letting go helps us to see the bigger picture. Which another thing I was thinking about as you were talking is, I think all things, all beings, including us, are always kind of yearning for the harmony or finding the harmony in life. And but we kind of overlay it with our ideas, our perceptions, our habits of thinking, but that we have, when we break through that, like seeing Avalokiteshvara or having that faith, it's really for a moment letting go and experiencing that freedom that harmony brings. I don't know if I've made any sense in what I'm saying, but it sounded good to me when I was thinking it and writing it down. And you said having compassion for myself is having compassion for the whole world, and having compassion for the whole world is having compassion for myself. And I think this goes back to kind of what I found you kind of pointing to, which is that compassion is that ability to see our delusion and to let go of it. And the delusion is always showing up in a different way. There was one other thing I wanted to say too, and other people probably have something to say too, but lots of things here. You said bring something in, you were talking about that precept that brings that precept of not intoxicating ourselves or others. You said that was bringing something in that is interfering with your experience of being whole. And again, it's, we try to add something, we try to get something rather than just seeing how things are. And by seeing how things are, by that letting go of our perceptions, we're able to see what we can do that can bring about harmony. Does that make sense? But if we bring something in, I love the way you said that, bring something in that interferes with our experience of being whole, that interferes with our experience of the bigger reality, and instead creates a kind of toxicity that actually interferes with that harmony. Yeah, it's kind of hard to express this stuff, but anyway, thank you a lot, because lots of things came up for me, and I'm sure that I can go on and on, but if somebody else has something to say, thanks, Bill.
I have just one comment. I think something that touched me. Thank you, Brooke. And here too, a bit like you said a couple of times, I'm not sure I can find the exact words for that. But what touched me in what you said is the gentleness that emanated from both your experience and the way you understand the precepts, and the way you were also apparently encouraged to understand the precepts, is that both something, of course, very, very strong, and at the same time mixed with great gentleness. And it touched me because it feels like in my life, of course, and in the world, is like when we want to correct something or when we're not in agreement with something, it often comes out with so much harshness. And you know, I don't know, being against the war and then finding ourselves using military terms, you know, to fight others, you know, that kind of thing, where it's very easy to fall when we want to be good. It's very easy to fall into harshness. And I was very, yeah, touch is the best word I can find for that gentleness that came through and was very soothing and a place of peace. So thank you for that.
I was really totally enwrapped with what you were saying. You spoke like so intimately and immediately about this experience. It's clearly so alive, and you made it live, you know, in the way you talked about it, and brought everything together, you know, all the parts that could seem so disparate of, you know, there's the three treasures, there's the three pure precepts, but how it's really all this one thing about interconnection and compassion. And yeah, it was really powerful. And I'm really grateful you actually read the whole Avalokiteshvara in your voice after telling us what you had told us, because it really made that live and breathe too. And so I am just blown away about how you could talk about all these things and take them apart and put words on them, because it's so hard to put words on them that that open up the meaning, really. So I am just really grateful. Thank you so much. That was very opening.
I just want to add on the comment that you had made about, you know, if you are whole and perfect the way you are, how can you admit any intoxicants into your body, like you and Tejo were mentioning? So that was poignant. And also, at one point when you talked about the 3 pure precepts, you know, doing no harm, doing good, and doing good for all beings. That's the way that I've heard it. But then one of the times you described it, you said the 3rd pure precept was transcending distinctions. And I can see how that would apply too. I'm not sure if this is a statement or if there's any questions there about transcending distinctions, if you want to say anything about that at all.
I can try, but I think that the 3rd precept is sort of like absolute reality, you know, referencing my idea of harm and good is just my idea of that. So what really is harm or good in absolute reality? I am too small really to know what is going to be beneficial for the whole world or harmful for the whole world. And I think all I can do is do my best to follow the precepts and my understanding of them in those circumstances at that time. You know, later I might find out that what I did caused harm, but it was not my intention at the time. So I think that's what the third one references in that transcendence.
Thank you.
I might want to mention, this was confusing to me for a long time, but originally the 3 pure precepts are the way you were just talking about them. But in the Soto Zen tradition, the 3rd pure precept is, it's written a little differently, rather than going beyond good and bad, which is basically what you were just talking about. It's embracing and benefiting all beings. And it's pointing to the bodhisattva practice, that these are bodhisattva precepts. But what's interesting to me is now when you were both just talking about it, I started to see that really, ultimately, they're the same thing. One is just kind of directing you a little bit more to, you know, your relationship with other beings, but actually going beyond good and bad is letting go of those perceptions, which is embracing and benefiting all beings. So, but they're stated in different ways, in a different way, in at least in Dogen's precepts. I don't know if it comes from China or not. I thought another interesting thing that you're pointing to is this idea of separation. I was thinking, you know, not being aware of that relationship that we're within, but when we are within that relationship, when we're fully experiencing that, it's not something that we really feel or understand really, except kind of in retrospect. But then there are indications of it. And I found it, I was thinking about that. I was thinking, yeah, I remember a time where I felt like I told somebody after Sesshin that I went to hell and back twice. And that experience of going to hell is, you know, how I described it was that experience of thinking I was a total failure, of thinking that, you know, I wasn't good enough, and just kind of what you described, not being enough or not having enough. But that experience of just like, oh, I'm a total failure and I'm this way, and identifying totally with that negative perception of something, and then suddenly recognizing that I was caught in that, you know. But I think to have those experiences and seeing that you can snap out of it is almost like the basis of faith, like you were talking about. And it helps me to kind of recognize it a little sooner, you know, before it completely consumes me to the point where I don't even know how to get myself out of that hole, you know. But to be able to recognize that a little bit sooner, you know, is a kind of freedom. So thank you for bringing that. I think we're past 11, so maybe we should stop. Thank you so much, Genryu. May the merit of this practice benefit all beings and bring peace. Thank you.